rush hour on your way home. Whatever the case, we will try to make the next 45 minutes to 1 hour truly worth your time. So let's dive in. The Union Budget 2025-2026 continues to pump resources into major programs like the Jal Jeevan Mission, the Swachh Bharat Mission. But here's the big question. Are these funds actually making a difference? Are they tackling regional disparities and ensuring long-term financial sustainability? And most importantly, how do we turn policy promises into real impact on the ground? To help us unpack these big questions, we have an incredible panel today, bringing together expertise in governance, finance, and policy. So buckle up, stay engaged, and let's make this session a valuable learning opportunity. I'd like to invite Jane Thomas, Country Coordinator at BORDA South Asia, to set the context for today's discussion. Over to you, Jane.
Thank you, Ansu. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I am switching off my video because I'm on my hotspot. Thank you, Ansu, again for setting the energy to the session. So everybody out there, good evening. My name is Jane. I'm the program coordinator at BORDA South Asia based in Bangalore. BORDA is a Germany-based international NGO working across multiple regions, including South Asia, Africa, and Latin America. But in BORDA South Asia, we work across 3 countries, that is India, Nepal, Bangladesh, and across 43 small towns with a vision to co-create and demonstrate viable solutions which enable small towns to drive climate-sensitive and inclusive WASH outcomes. So now that we know about BORDA, let's dive into the numbers. But before we dive into the numbers, let's take a step back and ask, why does the WASH budget actually matter so much? So investing in WASH is not an isolated expense, as WASH isn't just a sectoral priority. It is a foundation and a multiplier investment that strengthens health systems, economies, and environmental stability and sustainability. So the Union Budget 2025 underscores the pivotal role of water sanitation in India's development agenda, and the government's certain set of commitments are across SDGs, that is Goal 6 for clean water sanitation, Jal Jeevan Mission, SBM, and Amrit and the Urban Challenge Fund. So it is essential to examine how the government has advanced its agenda and addressed these key areas of concern. So today we're looking at how the budget has prioritized WASH. So if you have to look at this graph, we can understand that the Ministry of Jal Shakti holds a significant larger share of the WASH budget compared to Mahua, which is at 15,000 crores. Now that we've understood where the major funds are distributed, let's deep dive into the key ministries, components, and schemes and programs under these ministries. If you look under the Ministry of Jal Shakti, 67,000 crore is allocated for the major flagship program, that is the Jal Jeevan Mission. Although the current budget allocated is 67,000 crore, with a 4.51 decrease from last year. Despite the slight dip, JJM remains a cornerstone initiative aimed at providing safe drinking water to rural households. It embodies the principle Har Ghar Jal program, which is water to every household, reflecting the need for continued investment in ensuring universal water coverage. The next allocation is followed by Amrit, which stands at a significant increase of 25%, reflecting again an increased focus on improving water supply and sewage infrastructure in cities. The SDM Urban and the SDM Gramin remains the same as last year. If you have to look at another set of budget increases that is operated under the Department of Water Resource River Development, beginning with the river basin management, there is a significant increase of 57% that suggests a renewed focus on managing river basins for sustainable water distribution and conservation, followed by the National Water Mission with an increase of 4.4%, supporting water use efficiency and climate resilient water policies. Then it's followed by Namami Gange with a slight 0.1% that reflects the government's sustained commitment to cleaning and rejuvenating the Ganga River, and a small increase but reinforces focus on the groundwater conservation through the Atal Bhujal Yojana. And then if you look at the irrigation scheme, that is the PMKSY, again a slight increase of 0.1%, ensuring irrigation water reaches farmer efficiently. So now that we've looked at the positive increase in the budgets, let's look at what are the schemes or programs that is facing a budget cut. The largest reduction indicates a slowdown in the interbasin river water transfer project, that is for the interlinking of rivers by 31%, followed by the National River Conservation Plan with a decrease of 5.7%, reducing the focus on smaller river conservation programs beyond the Ganges, and a slight reduction in the major irrigation projects. But again, irrigation remains a priority under the PMKSY. So if you have to look at what are the key priorities and announcements based on the data we just saw, despite a slight dip in the JGM funding, the mission continues to be a high priority for the program as the Har Ghar Jal program is extended to 2028. And the introduction of the Urban Challenge Fund with a 100 crore allocation indicates a push for innovative solutions in urban wash infrastructure and governance. Again, there is an emphasis by the government encouraging PPP models to attract private investments in large-scale infrastructure projects, which will not only reduce the burden on public finances, but also introduce efficiency, technology, and innovation into the sector. Although there are no specific numbers, there has been an announcement in terms of increased outlay for states, presenting a huge opportunity probably for targeted investments in key subsectors, probably like sanitation, waste management, and resilient infrastructure, meaning that the states might have more autonomy and funding based on their local needs and priorities. With this, I set the context for what could be the discussion for today's webinar. I now hand it over to Ansu to lead the session.
Thank you, Jane, for providing that insightful backdrop and setting the stage for what promises to be a rich discussion. All right, before we move to the panel, a quick note for the audience. If you have any questions, please type them in the Q&A box, and I'll do my best to direct them to our panelists during the discussion. We have an esteemed panel with us today. Let me introduce them before we begin. Mr. Tikendra Singh Panwar is an urban policy expert and former Deputy Mayor of Shimla, recognized for his leadership in decentralized governance, climate resilience, and inclusive urban development. He played a key role in strengthening ward sabhas and empowering local governance while developing strategic urban plans like the Smart City Plan and the Disaster Mitigation Strategy. Currently, he is a member of the Kerala Urban Commission while also contributing to national urban policies and advising institutions like the National Institute of Urban Affairs. He has represented India at global forums, including the COP21, UN Habitat 3, and regularly writes on urban issues. Mr. Raman VR is a public policy and governance expert with over 3 decades of experience in public finance, public health, and WASH. He is the Executive Director of the Center for Budget and Governance Accountability and also serves as the National Convener of the Public Health Resource Network. He has led WASH financing strategies in India, including policy research at WaterAid and ATRI, and currently advises Water for People on Assam's WASH financing strategy. He has served on multiple national and international committees, teaches at leading institutions, and has authored several publications. Ms. Shrestha Saraswat is a municipal finance expert and senior manager at Janagraha, specializing in strengthening municipal-owned sources, revenues, and borrowings. She has worked closely with senior leadership across the union, state, and local governments, as well as multilateral institutions and market regulators, to drive systemic financial reform. She co-drafted Tamil Nadu's property and professional tax rules and has played a significant role in enhancing property tax revenues in India. Before her current role, she worked with the Ministry of Finance on infrastructure financing, international economic engagements, and public investment strategies. A warm welcome to all of you and a heartfelt thank you for taking the time to join us this evening. We look forward to the wealth of experience you will bring to this discussion. Without further ado, let's dive straight into our conversation. Okay, so to begin, let's talk about budget allocations and governance. While Jane has kind of set the context of what allocations have been made in the WASH sector, what has increased, and what has decreased, the big question remains, how strong is the commitment to decentralized governance? So Tikendra sir, from your experience in municipal governance, do you think this budget truly supports local financial autonomy? What do you think needs to change to give municipal bodies more control over WASH financing? Over to you, sir.
To me, Ansu?
Yes.
Acha, okay. Thank you so much. And it's really nice to be here this evening. And just to also tell our participants that both BORDA and Janagraha are supporting partners to the Kerala Urban Commission in their own very competent capacities. So yeah, I thank both the institutions. So what I'm going to do also is that we have two very eminent experts here, both Shrestha and Raman Saab, who will be speaking. So I would like to, who would be speaking specifically WASH, and about the budgetary provisions. How I want to structure my discussion is as follows. I would like to be a little different this time. And in fact, this is the first webinar where we would like to trigger a debate that this form of devolutionary process we must get rid of. That's the first point I would like to make, and I'll substantiate that why. So what is the alternative? In fact, we've just written an article, Hitesh and I, myself, so soon it will get published. So it's very fresh in our memories. Having lived that experience for a couple of decades now, serving the cities, but this should not continue. That's the first thing. The second part is about what I call, and by the way, I have not looked into the Jal Jeevan Mission and the river basin. So perhaps Raman Saab and Jane was phenomenally good in explaining that. But what I have looked at is some of the figures in the urban development, the central sponsored schemes, central sector schemes, and also the direct transfers. So that will be the third. The second part would be what I call the criminality of, unconcern from the previous budget to this budget. I'll just try to make a little comment on that. And of course, third about the, about where exactly the budget figures. So I'm not really very keen or interested into that because now following some 15 budgets in the last 15 or 20 years, at the end of the year, you find the same story continuing. But still, since this is a budget discussion. So the first thing that I want to raise is and trigger a debate. Let's inverse the process. And when I say let's inverse the process, what does it mean? I say first, for heaven's sake, try to understand that this is going to be the India's era of urbanization in the global world, which means the largest number of Homo sapiens are going to live urban Homo sapiens are going to live in India. It's a matter of few decades. And if that is going to happen, then some of the basic questions of our urbanization needs to be dealt with. And for that, there has to be a very strong interplay of different actors and forces, which includes people, which includes governance structures, and of course, the state per se. And when I say state, the nation state, that is still trying to command and steer the process of urbanization. So here I want to make a departure. The process of urbanization being steered by the federal government, I think it is time that we should think in a little different chamber. Right from the 90s, what we call the post-liberal, post-neoliberal capitalist, the neoliberal capitalist economy. If you see many interventions at different intersections of period, what we find is a commonality. And the commonality is what we call the great growth machine. Of course, it comes from the global north vocabulary, but which also infects us and infests us. And there where the new vocabulary comes, that the cities ought to be growth engines. Of course, it comes from mid-80s when the National Commission on Urbanization was formed. Now, why I'm making this point, though it's a little away from, but one must understand, WASH cannot be divorced from the overall budget trajectory and the strategy that we have as far as urbanization goes. So, the cudgels and the space of urban development, which shouldn't have been taken by the federal government, actually the federal government took over. And then they started deciding, of course, the 74th and constitutional amendment also came in. But the laws that are to be changed, so land laws, cities to become centers of investment to attract capital. So this entire change in, and of course, the basic genesis that cities are spaces for accumulation capital, which is nothing wrong. But that accumulation of capital should go to the city spaces. Let the cities then decide how do you democratize that, whether you want to put it for toilets. So what is the fundamental point? The fundamental point is that first thing, there's phenomenal wealth that the cities generate in this country. There's phenomenal wealth in the sense that 90% of the government revenues, some 66 to 67% of the GDP, I'm not sure because those are some errors in the figures, some say 70% of the GDP comes from the cities. So if that is the wealth that the cities are generating in some 4,500 odd statutory towns and maybe some 4,000 census towns, then I think what is being devolved in the entire devolutionary process is abysmally low. Now, why I want to bring this figure is, first thing, that currently of all the 96,777 crore rupees budget that we are talking about, still let's put it 1 lakh crore rupees annual. This is not even zero. This is somewhere around 0.5% to 0.8% of the GDP. Our neighboring countries like Philippines, not even to talk about China, Brazil, Philippines is 3.1%. Brazil is 5.1%. Likewise, South Africa is the intergovernmental transfers to the cities. I think it is high time that we increase that. That's the first. Now, the point is how that money is to be devolved. So instead of the three basic components in which the federal government works, from the urban lens, because I beg my pardon, because I haven't gone into Jal Jeevan Mission and the rivers, because though they actually influence urban processes, but not to that extent. So I kept myself to the urban. The centrally sponsored schemes and the central sector schemes, and of course the direct transfers that we talk. The direct transfers have gone low. My point is, why should the federal government decide how many toilets should there be in say, Bangalore? So how many houses should there be in Calcutta? Or how many STPs are to be constructed in Shimla? So what does it mean? In simple language, it means, and that's why I said completely inverse the process, increase from 1 lakh to 2 lakh crores at least. So of that, so that's the first thing that should have happened. And it's not that there's no money. I'll come to that, because when I explain the economic survey. And so the second thing is that of the total budget, federal budget that is devolved for urban processes, 70% straight away give to the cities, straight away, of course, through the state finance commissions. Forget about your central sponsored schemes and the central sector schemes. Just keep 30% to that. So just imagine the kind of reinvention it will create a sense of creativity. Of course, do not give just directly to the cities in the sense that let cities decide. Now, for example, if Shimla doesn't want houses to be constructed under the PMAY, why should there be money flowing under the PMAY to Shimla? If we do not want more toilets to be constructed, because already we have saturated that, then why should you spend money on constructing toilets? Maybe, and so if, for example, our terrain doesn't allow large STPs, and it's a decentralized form of, so the point is the entire localization of the process, trigger that process, create that creativity, and shed this money in a very inverse form. And that's very easy. I mean, it's not that it's not happening elsewhere. It's in many of the countries that is being practiced. Else, we actually become victims of the overall trajectory of urbanization that is being steered by our federal government. Now, let me share a very funny anecdote, and this is when I was serving as the deputy mayor of Shimla. By the way, also tell me how much time, because once I am in the process, then I'll be in the flow.
So
I won't stop it.
After the anecdote, let's take a pause. Let's go to other panelists and I'll come back to you.
No, then I've not even come to second. So quickly.
We'll come to the next set of. I have put down your three sections, so we'll address each section one by one.
So when I was serving as the deputy mayor, Venkaiah Naidu was the urban development minister. Later, he became the vice president of the country. So in one of our conversations, he said, Tikender, you know what the problem in this country is? I said, you tell me, you are the minister, I'm just a deputy mayor. He said, the cities don't have money. So the cities come to their provincial governments and state governments. The state governments are also bankrupt, minus a few. So then the state governments come to us. We are completely delinquent. So the entire now we have I mean in the economic survey, 100% of our GDP is in debt. So which means it's all debt financed. So he said, then what do we do since we do not have money? We go to the multilateral institutions, and then the multilateral institutions take the stride, and that is how we drive our urban process. I mean, hearing it out from a central minister, I mean, you can understand these processes. So the point is, how do we inverse this process? I think one of the fundamental, maybe we do not achieve it now, maybe we do not achieve it 5 years, but things have proven down the line in the last few decades, right from 90s to 3 decades, that more than 3 decades now, that actually things are not functioning. If you have 70% of the waste being untreated going into the ecosystem, then there is something fundamentally wrong. So let the drivers of urbanization be cities, be these census towns, and then create a mechanism where the devolutionary process is extremely democratic. This is the first. Now you want me to come to the second, third later?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that will be great. Thank you so much. I think that was a great start and a great nudge to inverse the process. It's a very bold process, but then let's continue the conversation. And I want to move to Raman sir here. And let's look at the numbers also more closely. Sir, according to you, do you think this year's budget provide adequate fiscal space plus even strengthening WASH? We have seen multiple allocations across the spectrum of WASH, but then do you think it's striking the right balance between infrastructure investment and also ensuring the long-term operational sustainability of these systems? Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I hope I'm audible. And I'm sorry, I was about to reach Delhi by 3 p.m., but somehow it didn't happen and I was on the road in between. But, I'm in a stable place now, as far as I think. The question is very important. Whether the budget allocations are providing adequate fiscal space for this is an important question in the federal nature of India, which Tikender also was mentioning. One leg, one pillar of the federal is the urban self-governments, and the other pillar is the local self-governments. Then you have the state government. When I say local self-governments, it has 3 tier, which has the village, which has the sub-district and the district level. I'm not using the Indian terminologies for the reason that I've been told there are some international participants listening to this as well. So this federalism has to reflect in the overall financing. So in our country, what happens is the national budget stands at one point, and the state budgets, because water is a state subject, and those kinds of the state subject related issue is there. So the state budgets are also equally important to look at to get a total picture. Then we need to also look at what the finance commissions are allocating, for the, of course, in the last finance commission, the 15th finance commission has, mandated the use of a very important percentage of this for WASH. So this is where what Tikender said becomes very important. The need-based and choice-based, local choice-based allocation is important. We have under the Jal Jeevan mission or under the Swachh Bharat mission, we have this project implementation planning process. That plan goes to, but somehow, when it comes to the actual budgeting process, the budget always, that is one lesson that the fiscal planning and the public financing in the country has to learn. The budget somehow becomes, the outlay is always fixed. And then you have to look at the kind of plans, and finally the local plans becomes almost the currency of the local plans becomes invalid for the reason that the outlay is fixed. and the available money is fixed, you can see that after the 5 years of Swachh Bharat mission, which was, of course, a tremendous and unprecedented kind of financial attention to the very important issue of sanitation. So that part is very, very important to realize and also to recognize. But on the other hand, after the 5 years, it has gone back to the routine of that 7,500, that range of crores for the rural, and also a similar kind of smaller amount for the urban at the national level I'm talking about. Then, whether the states are adding their portion because of the mission's financial, arrangement and understanding between the state and the center, there is a proportion that the states are to be added. And in most states, we can see that the allocations for water and sanitation remains to be within that range. Whatever is the specific commitment that they have made to the center. So this somehow, when the state subjects are driven by the center, this happens. This happens in the way that the state's attention to their own subject matter, it becomes little down, and the mission targets again, your question comes here, the infrastructure driven budgeting process, both for Swachh Bharat mission and Jal Jeevan mission. This was a major issue, and that takes over the process of attaining the benefits of wash, the benefits of healthy wash. So in a sense, from a financial understanding, the public health budget for any country globally, there is an understanding that at least 3% of the GDP should be allocated for broad public health activities within the country. But unfortunately, in our country, including water and sanitation, our public health budget, broad public health budget, is just 1.5, less than 1.5. At times, it is 1.29 percentage, 1.3 percentage of the GDP. So that means, despite having policies, despite having the intent, despite having the political drive for making 100 percentage functional household tap connection, or 100 percentage household sanitation, or the toilets, or the hygiene. The political intent, the stated political intent, it is very clear, and it is there, and it is welcome. But on the other hand, this attainment of goal, if you put together public health and water and sanitation, in most countries, water and sanitation is part of the public health department also. Here also, it is part of public health department. It is called public health engineering, though, but it is separately driven and run by another ministry, another department, so on and so forth. So, and also, when urban sanitation comes under the urban, rural sanitation comes under public health engineering department, doesn't directly fall under the rural development department, except in some states wherein they have made it part of the rural development department. So this fiscal realization and fiscal fruitfulness will happen only when we are able to consider this the federal nature, and then in an integrated manner, in a comprehensive manner, we are able to look at the budget, whether the amount is sufficiently there, for a local body, or the rural local bodies, or the urban local body. I mean, that means at the district level, or at the local body level, and at the state level. And how states are prepared for this. This is very important. And that is where I am seeing the major problem. Our capacities for sanitation at this point, for running, planning, implementing all that. If you look at, for example, one of the larger cities of Delhi, their master plan, how much that master plan of any city, I'm just taking Delhi as an example, how much that master plan is able to envisage how the city of Delhi, or city of Mumbai, or city of Shimla, or whichever, is envisioning itself by say like the SDG goal is 2030. So what is the city's own outlook about its sanitation and water and hygiene growth by 2030? We really don't have that kind of an answer available. And that is where the city's own vision and outlook, how to link that with budget. That is where the local capacities are becoming important. currently most of our one more point to this important point. So currently our local capacities are driven by very provisional and outsourced technical agencies and the work of the technical agencies, but how to make it available in a sustainable fashion under the local governments and under the districts, under the states and under the national. So we need that institutional capacities, and we need to also think about wash utilities. And now it is 10 years of both together Swachh Bharat Mission and Jal Jeevan Mission. And this is the time that the government should think about this larger and long-term institutional arrangements for running the water sanitation kind of services. Yeah, I would stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think you asked a very important question of how do you improve local capacities, right? I mean, local capacity at the ULB or state levels. And this is where I really want to kind of move to you, Shrestha, and ask what do you think? Because we know that your ULBs definitely are facing issues with respect to financial resources or institutional capacity for wash service delivery. They're struggling with it. So, what kind of steps do you think urban local bodies can take to strengthen their financial sustainability so that they can also independently manage water and sanitation services? Over to you, Shrestha.
So, essentially, it links to what I talked about, having more devolution, having more funds, all of. Are you able to hear me? Yeah. So, so just to basically recognize that we need a lot more funding for WASH, both at the central level, at the state level, and urban local bodies as well. And even if you look at the last decades of investment, 72% of urban infra investment has been through center and state, right? And own source revenues or urban local bodies' own revenues really has just been about 15% of infra spending. This is the landscape. We have to change it. But within this also, and basically all the schemes so far, whether it's at the central level or the state level, look at urban local bodies in a one-size-fits-all approach. They don't recognize that millions plus cities have legacy benefits. They are economic growth centers. They have more financial and technical capabilities. And if really we were to look at financial sustainability, it's probably there that we should put our eggs in, not the long tail of smaller urban local bodies, which will continue to be dependent on grants for the near to medium term. They will need to be reliant on the central and the state government to finance not just WASH, but any of the infrastructure that needs to be built within region. So there is a need for a differentiated approach for different cities when we talk about urban local governments. And so specifically, if you're talking about strengthening capacities, right, and what steps need to be taken to financial management, strengthening financial management capacities, the first thing also is to look at the data. Where are the cities right now? So if we look at specifically on water, 70% of 1 million plus cities report less than 50% metered coverage, right? And with even cities like Chennai and Guwahati continuing to levy flat tariffs for bulk of their consumers. There is, again, basis the service level benchmark data that is available with us. We know that there's substantial under recovery of operation and maintenance costs. We can't even talk about recovery of capex because even when it comes to operational expenditure, cities are able to recover less than 50% of those costs. So there are critical reforms that need to be undertaken. And if you were to look at legislatively what's happening, only 13 of 28 states do not even mandate for periodic revision of tariffs in their municipal act and rules. 11 of the 17 states that we studied, basis a review of their tariff sheets, do not even lay down, at the state level, there is no direction to urban local bodies to levy water tariffs to recover O&M costs. So that at a policy level is not even there. We can't really expect urban local bodies to think about wash services in a sustainable manner. Right? So that's the context. And there are two critical reforms that need to be undertaken. And that essentially is where cities and state government need to invest capacities. And hopefully, even at the central level, when we are thinking about schemes and how to actually design schemes to bolster financial capacities for million plus cities, there are two critical reforms. The first is the state governments should mandate levy of user charges, both for water and for sanitation, that is linked to O&M cost recovery. At least if it's 50% now, at least 80% of the O&M costs should be recovered, right, through tariff levying, and mandate periodic revision of tariffs in their municipal acts and rules. And there is no reason why middle class cities should not be undertaking universal metering and should not be levying volumetric tariffs. So 1 million plus cities should be mandated to undertake universal metering and have a levy of volumetric tariff. And there's a third critical reform also, which, since we do have time, the third critical reform is to improve collection efficiency. Currently, if you look at just water charges, it's an abysmal 41% at the national level. So even if you have 100 rupees, which is your demand base, you're just able to recover 41 rupees. So 59 rupees is just going away by ULG is not taking punitive action, by not taking any administrative action to recover. So there is, and parallelly, there's also an issue of capacities really. They don't have the required staff to actually chase the defaulters. So the third critical reform would be investing both in terms of the required staff and investing administrative capacity in looking at recovery of the dues that are due to urban bodies for water.
All right, thank you so much, Rita. I think those are really good pointers for us to think of also as we work very closely with the cities and help them, advise them on how to take or how to kind of strengthen their service delivery in WASH. Okay, so now we'll come back to you, Tikendra sir. We'll build on this and go back to the conversation that you wanted to talk on devolutionary processes and direct transfers. So, and how it will address the issue of, financial challenges faced, especially by smaller towns, or maybe also address any issues of regional disparities that, that might be there across the country. Also, since you worked with different city sizes and you know how it's distributed. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ansu. So I think once again, I would like to reiterate that WASH cannot be divorced from the overall production processes. And why I'm saying so, because the overemphasis over the period of last few decades, that yes, user charge, living user fee is going to ameliorate your problems. I do not see in that lens. So how do I see, this entire process? I think I would here like to refer to the economic survey. Now, that's where I call criminalization. I mean, if you see the 2024 economic survey of the previous year, what is it that is happening? And I'm quoting from the government statistics, that the corporate profits in the last 15 years, that's where the money, the way the money is. I mean, people say there's no money. I say there's a hell lot of money. The point is, you have actually, you need to change the flow of this money. The corporate profits rose to a 15-year peak high. Now, imagine 2005, the figure that we have, 2003, there was 2.1% of GDP, just the 500 nifty companies I'm talking about. So 2.1% of the GDP means you just count in terms of the total, volume of money. I mean, all the volume that we're talking about. Currently, 2024 data we have, 2024, it's 4.2% of the GDP. I mean, imagine where are we heading? There's a phenomenal wealth being created, but this wealth is being amassed by a few, just the 500 nifty companies I'm talking about. So easy way could have been, I mean, you just have that progressive taxation system in which you get the money from the super rich. And that is how, that is why one of the reasons why I time and again keep on reminding our participants, don't forget, is water a right or a need? And this debate starts from the Washington Consensus, from the mid-80s, when And Ursula Hughes, if someone wants to go into the literature, please read out Ursula Hughes, how your use value turns into exchange values. I mean, it's this whole debate that continues for more than 2 decades. And there is a reason why I'm bringing this out. So this is roughly 4 times. And this, and I mean, I just, because I'm in Bangalore, national school, so the CDD made a presentation here, interesting. I'm going to share that. So according to CDD, a rupee invested in wash sanitation is a 4 times gain in gain in social dividend, health, etc. So I think that's where we need to figure out how things need to move ahead. And yeah, Shrestha was right. I mean, of the total spending in the infrastructure, if you see, right from day one, we were saying PPPs, but there are no PPPs. It's not even 3%. It's all the federal government money, this provincial government money, of course, which is too less, but we want more. But at the same time, there's huge chunk of money lying. The point is, how do we trigger this debate to have the democratization, the democratization of the surplus in the system, and not to further, tax the poor. That's the thing. Now coming to the budget, why is it a little criminal? You see, because there we find a jump from 82,000 crore to 96,777 crore urban development. But look at the revised estimates. I mean, the revised estimates point out that there is an underutilization of 22.9%. But remember that the underutilization is not universal. There is an overutilization of budget. So the point that I want to make is, A, there is phenomenal wealth. We are not decentralizing it, democratizing it. The surplus is definitely getting generated in the ecosystem. That's the first thing. The second thing is, even if you look at the budget, it's more capital intensive technological way, I mean, the urban development. So whereas you have underutilization, phenomenal underutilization in Swachh Bharat Mission in BMAY, but at the same time, if you see the metro projects, there is an overutilization. And not just that, the metro projects get 40% more allocation than the previous year. Whereas if you see Swachh Bharat Urban, there is an underutilization of 56%. I mean, just imagine, what does it mean? So 5,000 crore was it, and now 2,159 crore. Again, 5,000 crore, we do not know how much money will be spent. So that is why, I mean, I go back to this point that forget about, keep 30% for these centrally sponsored schemes, some big tickets that you want to, for optics or whatever. I mean, what Raman Saab also pointed out. But it needs to be localized. And that's where I want to raise. And for that, you have to inverse this entire process of devolution. And this entire process, which was there in the 74th Constitutional Amendment, and I happen to be reviewing that amendment with the person who wrote that amendment, K.C. Sivaramakrishnan. And in his last days, I mean, he didn't survive long after that. He said, your new models of urban governance, like the Swachh Bharat Mission and all, where you enter into the mission mode, bypassing, when we hear arguments that, look, the provincial governments, federal governments must take a call instead of whether they want to tax. Okay, if you want to tax, let the city take a call. But if you don't, city is sufficient. Take, for example, Trivandrum. It has a 200 CR surplus. Let them decide how that money is to be utilized. So the point is, if that has to happen, then I think the entire question of localization is something very, and that's where I want to finish off that this whole debate about and what K.C. Sivaramakrishnan was pointing out, I just forgot because the phone just rang, is that these missions are like writing an obituary of the 74th Constitution. So and we've seen these are not sustainable models. Most of the cities that are being flooded now are the cities where you find smart cities projects being unleashed. Patna, for example. Patna, historically, I've learned, never flooded because Patna is way above Ganges. But because of your smart city projects, so the point is, when you divorce your planning process from the people aspirations or from the whole process of local governance, I think it's not a sustainable model. And that's where we find more and more climate-induced disasters also. Right?
Thank you, sir. I think very critical statement made to conclude that statement. Okay, I'll move to Raman, sir, and I want to continue the conversation that you were having. So, what do you think are those key changes that we need to ensure long-term sustainability in wash financing? You've been starting to talk about it, but then can you probably elaborate it and maybe wrap it up for us?
Yeah, thank you. One of the critical things I told that this institution building, wherein from the systems building and building blocks concept of World Health Organization, the WASH systems also has to come up with a clear idea of human resources for WASH. Currently, if we look at what is the amount of regular salaries and staff, that the WASH programs are covering, it is a very limited number of to sub-district level, sub-engineers, and at the city level, the public health engineers. So it is very, very top-driven, kind of a human resource arrangement that the water sanitation systems are having. So this need to change. For that, so this concept of human resources for WASH needs to be introduced. So human resources for WASH, we need to tell that currently, I mean, localization from the urban perspective is still easier, in our current context. Last year, I was discussing with one of the major donors about how the the panchayat capacities can be built up. And one of the ideas that not ideas, rather, it is the alarming situation at the panchayat level in most of the North Indian states, that one panchayat is having only one person who is called the panchayat secretary. The rural panchayats are having one uh, full-time staff, and another person is under the project, of employment guarantee program, the NREGS, and that person is called Rozgar Sahayak or employment assistant, whatever you can call that position. And these two are the only available staff setup in a rural local body of, from 1,000 to 5,000, whatever is the range of population that they are serving. So how would they plan? How would they, implement, the water and sanitation program, understanding the commitments that the national government has made in terms of sustainability, in terms of, climate resilience, in terms of disaster resilience, and in terms of inclusion, all these things to plan this. And then this last mile connectivity and the last mile, the travel, the journey that these local bodies have to do, because when you do in the mission mode, you will complete close to 90% of your target, because they all will be mobilized as part of the mission.
Looks like we lost him there. That's okay. So we'll just we'll come back to him when he's back. Okay,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
no worries.
So even though our missions, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So the our missions, specifically, uh, the level of inputs that is needed, and the level of capacities that is needed at the local level, we really don't have. Even if you look at the corporations are one thing. If you look at the small and medium towns, at the urban level, again this issue of capacities come. So we need to really look at what is the need of human resources, what is the technical human resources. So with the donor, I was discussing about how can we enhance the spending abilities of a panchayat. For enhancing the spending abilities of a panchayat, it is important that they know how to plan, how to account, how to audit, and all that, which is not
All right, that's okay. We will move on to you, Shrestha. All right, so we are looking at annual budgets of urban local bodies, but how do you think cities can develop a long-term municipal finance roadmap for wash investments beyond the union budget?
First to recognize that,
Okay.
yeah, I think, yeah, Mr. Raman.
So we just moved on to Shrestha, but we'll come back to you, sir.
Yeah.
We
So first to recognize that it will be very difficult to move beyond center and state governments' budgetary allocation until and unless we actually have an inverse approach as to how we are currently financing infrastructure, right? Previously also, it's been union and center. So it's a long way to go to actually expect cities to be able to reform their finances to the extent that they'll be able to independently take care of wash finances, right? So the only limited thing, and this is more for if you look at the way cities' revenues are currently, right? There is at the national level, it's about 46% still on grants. Smaller cities, it's about 66% dependency on intergovernmental transfers, both in terms of grants and assigned revenues. So we'd have to be cognizant that municipal finance, no matter how much you reform, until unless you change the way devolution happens on the ground, right? You're giving ULGs their due by giving them either a share of the share of GST or share of stamp duty revenues to actually bolster their revenue base. You can't expect WASH to be financed. Uh, Definitely not the capital expenditure that WASH services need. But despite that, and I think there was a bit of a concern on user charges being used, but even within user charges, it's a critical piece. We need to have a differentiated approach maybe to the user base, but people who are in the panel or people who are attending the webinar, they can afford to pay for civic amenities. And the ones that can't, of course, you need to have a set of exemptions that are inbuilt. Without making services, not just wash, any service that an urban local body provides, without making it sustainable, you will always end up in a resource constrained scenario where the amount of infrastructure that needs to be built is much, much more than what a city can build, even with grants. So you need to make services sustainable. You can do it in different ways. You can charge, you can have a differential pricing model, you can have cross subsidizing. You can charge more to the people who pay more or who consume more, right? That's essentially the volumetric tariff concept. So you will charge users that use more pricing. And you can also have a different model of cost recovery by recycling treated wastewater, selling it to industry, selling it to agricultural, selling it to basically the manufacturing sector at a higher price so that you can then compensate the people who can't afford. Water is a public good. We have to recognize that. But any service that an urban local body is giving, there needs to be at least a component of pricing that needs to be there. So that's on that. And then what I'd suggested for million plus cities, they have to move towards volumetric tariff. There's no escaping it. It is a shame if cities and million plus cities are even unable to meet their OPEX costs. And that's just a travesty. There's no reason why that should be the case. And if we also take a different view of it, the moment you start charging users a fee, they expect better services. If you don't charge anything, whether it's wash, whether it's SWN, the moment you start charging for a service, accountability also goes up. Because people are, it's the same way. If I'm paying property taxes, I would expect cities to work in a different fashion. If I'm paying that much income taxes, I hold the central government responsible. So we have to look at user charges also in that lens of bringing in accountability from users. That in itself leads to better transparency, better accountability, better service delivery, and then better cities.
Shrestha. So in the interest of time, I think we'll have to wrap up very soon. But before we wrap up, is Raman sir still here? Okay. Yeah, before we wrap up, let me pose one very quick challenge to whoever is available, at least Shrestha and Yuthikendra sir. What could be that one bold suggestion that you would give in the budget, just one, which can make wash financing truly groundbreaking. One particular suggestion. I know you've mentioned multiple things, but then that's one thing that really should change without any question. One words, one sentences, please. Then we'll wrap it. Thank you.
I didn't hear you. You said one word that would make what?
I was saying, if for instance, if you could wave a magic wand and say one thing in the budget should change to make WASH financing really groundbreaking, based on all the parameters that you've already indicated in your conversation, what is that one bold thing that you would do? Just one.
Okay. So please don't give any money to WASH. Just give straight away to the cities. Let the cities decide WASH. That's it.
Makes sense.
You're not supposed to decide toilets and whatever.
Shrestha.
I would actually say that I look forward to the Urban Challenge Fund guidelines, and we can actually mobilize commercial financing and hold both the central government and cities responsible. If we are pumping in even 10,000 crore, let it go to the bankable projects. Let it actually usher in where there is demand, where there is a potential for commercial financing, let's utilize it so that then we can free up money for infrastructure projects that cannot be funded through commercial financing.
Great. Thank you, Shrestha. So actually, we quite late right now, and so we'll not be taking up any further questions at this point. What we'll do is we'll definitely ensure
so
that all...
I want to make one point because Shrestha raised a very pertinent question, but it's not pricing is not to be seen in a very narrow ecosystem of the city. It's also the way we design our cities. I mean, why should they reach out to my place and then increase their capital expenditure? Do you know, Shrestha, Delhi is now planning to pump water from Sirmaur, some 400 kilometers, and then they will charge the capital. It's foolishness. It's absurdity. So why shouldn't you create? So it's the entire ecosystem of urban planning, and it starts some 2.5 centuries ago where they say solution to pollution is dilution. I mean, the entire system has gone completely off the track. So that's the first thing. The second point, take for example Shimla. Because I've served the city. Do you know per kiloliter cost of water production in Shimla? Any faint idea? Just guess.
Much higher. It's much higher. It's like probably upwards of 20 rupees per kiloliter, I'm sure.
170 rupees per kiloliter. Why? Because nowhere in the world you pump water 2,000 meters above your head, and then distribute it. That's because that's the legacy of the British. The British were a colonial empire. They could loot the entire wealth of the countries and then have Shimla as their destination. Now, you cannot charge 170 rupees per kiloliter from the people. And to tell you that we were taxing Indian residents 17 rupees in 1886. It's not that people do not know to pay. They are paying taxes. The tragedy is that the ecosystem is designed in such a way that these, you call it capex or you call operation and maintenance costs, this has to be seen in a very wider lens. The entire system, the way, I'm in Bangalore. Can you believe that? You dried up all your 300 lakes and then you just moved to Kaveri. What is the fun? Tell me what is. That is my.
I think I know, absolutely important point, and I think we could go on and on talking about this. But
let's have an offline conversation about this.
Yeah, we should have bilateral conversations around this, definitely. Cool. So and also we'll not be addressing any Q&A at this point, unfortunately. But what we will do is the team will definitely take on all your questions, and we will respond to you personally after reaching out to our experts if there's a requirement around it. Let me very quickly summarize the key takeaways so it stays in our heads from today's discussion. Is definitely we need to inverse the trajectory of urbanization by the federal government and let cities be the drivers of urbanization. We need to bring in progressive taxation systems so that we can also address the rise in corporate benefits where this phenomenal wealth has to be decentralized. Raman sir mentioned about human resources for WASH, that they need to be utilized, and so that we can enhance the spending capabilities of the local body. Cities should have their own outlook because they have differentiated approaches where their local capacities shouldn't be driven by the outsourced technical agencies. And Shesh also mentioned about reform suggestions to improve financial capacity in WASH delivery, where you mandate user charges levying, and also collection efficiencies to be improved. And we should move from this resource constraint scenario where services are sustainable, accountability is increased by charging user charges, and so that there is a whole so that cities can meet their OPEX charges as well, so that your operation sustainability is also maintained. So yeah, I think with this I want to close, and I say that huge round of applause, I think, to all our panelists, and I'm sorry that Raman sir couldn't stay till the end because of his poor network. But I think your insights were absolutely invaluable, and we truly appreciate you sharing your time with us and expertise with us. Also, a shout out to the amazing audience who stayed with us, even though we stretched the clock a little. I think WASH discussions do tend to overflow, so why don't? So we hope today's conversations sparks new ideas, collaborations, and most importantly, action in the WASH sector. Have a great evening, everybody, and we look forward to continued conversations on this important topic. And thanks once again. Thank you so much, Shrestha and Thikendra. Thank you.